Brand My Podcast. This is a show for podcasters to start your podcast with confidence and elevate your voice to give your listeners a brand they can connect with. Brand My Podcast.
G'day there and welcome to the second episode of Brand My Podcast. I'm your host, Frank. Thank you very much for coming back for episode 2 of this podcast. I hope you found something useful out of that first episode. I know it was just an intro, but now we're getting into the nuts and bolts of how to brand your podcast and what the benefits are of starting your podcast with some confidence of having a brand and a great plan for your show. Now, I want to take a step back quickly before I get into today's topic and just reflect on the first time I discovered what a podcast was. It's about 8 or so years ago now, and it was a show called Hamish and Andy. These guys are in Australia. They were radio presenters at the time. They had a really funny show. They're great guys. They've gone on to do bigger, better things since. But their podcast was just a recording of their radio show in the afternoons, 2 hours, condensed into, I think it was like 45 minutes between songs and all the rest of it. And I listened to that on my way home or to work the next day if I missed the episode that day that they were talking. That was kind of it. And I thought podcasting was only for people like that, radio broadcasters that had the means to, record these kind of things, have the mic and the studio set up so it would sound, schmick, and have people call in and talk. And this was before Zoom, obviously, and accessibility to different sort of mic setups that wasn't so fandangled and complicated. Now it is so much easier, and it's why I like podcasting so much now. It's such an easy medium to connect with, to get onto your devices, both on your phones and your desktop or your iPad or your car. You can listen to a podcast when you are driving, when you are exercising, when you are doing the shopping, cooking, laying in the bath and relaxing, whatever it might be. It's such an accessible medium, and it's one that people listen to at length and will also come back to time and time again until they finish the episode. So you can pause it and they will come back. Whereas something like Instagram content, it's kind of like there in the moment, and you don't have the opportunity to get that person's attention back again unless you create more content. So a podcast is a great medium for that, and it has such long listenership. So no matter if you're making a small podcast like this, 5 to 10 minutes, or you're making a 60 minutes or 3-hour podcast, there are going to be people there that want to listen and keep coming back for more and finish the episode as well to get it to that completion. Now, for me, you can create a podcast about anything. I've created podcasts about what it is I do and how I can help others like me. But you could be a gardener and create a podcast about gardening. You could be a sewist, as my wife likes to call herself, and talk about sewing and craft and all that kind of thing. You could be into music or design, health and well-being and fitness, or even talk about a niche topic of something like Star Wars, which is pretty close to my heart. If you're seeing this on YouTube, you'll see the BB-8 and Han Solo behind me on my shelf. I could make a podcast about that and just talk about Star Wars to my heart, this content, which probably will be never. You can talk about anything and everything, even the cricket or football, your favorite sporting team, or your favorite books like Harry Potter. It's such an accessible medium that you can create content for. And so today's topic here is talking about what is the purpose of my podcast. Not just who it's for, but why am I doing this? Why is it being made for? Is it just for me to express myself, which is such a valid purpose? And if someone else believes what you believe, then perfect, as Simon Sinek would say. But what we want to establish is what the purpose is of our podcast. Is it a podcast that entertains people? Is it a podcast that enlightens people? Is it a podcast that educates and connects people? Or is it one that just is there to inspire people? Like, I listen to Seth Godin's Akimbo podcast, and that thing is just like inspiring. There are several others like that are in that health and well-being space that really pump you up. And by listening to someone's voice, you get that intonation of what they are trying to say and how they are trying to say it, which is lost in translation in something like a Medium article. A Medium article is best for something that is actionable, but we can all talk, we can all verbally communicate. And this is the best thing about podcasting. So it's trying to understand why you want to start a podcast and what that purpose is. For my own podcasts, apart from this one, I wanted to make Branding Bantam one of my other podcasts to help small business owners identify the impact branding can have on their success. I wanted to make Two Red Chairs as a way to share my experiences as well as those of others like me as creatives, for creatives to see what that journey is of that design life and how there's no prescribed way of starting a creative business or living a creative life. So think about it in three different ways. The top of the pyramid is your purpose. So, who is it for and why are you doing it? If you can write that down into one sentence, you're off to a flyer. The second tier down is what the mission of the podcast is. Is there something that's, beyond maybe altruistic that you're trying to achieve for you and your audience? What's the goal for you and for them? And then looking next down is the vision for the future of your podcast. Where is this going? You can set up a few different episodes at the start here, but where do you think it's going to go into the future? Is it to create this as a lead magnet to gain more clients or customers? Is it to monetize and create a sponsored podcast of a highly listened podcast, create several thousands or even millions of listeners? Having that vision for what success actually is for your podcast is key. So that way it gives you some metrics for success to really align yourself with what it is you are trying to achieve here with this podcast. As I said before, if it is altruistic and you just are here to show up and give, that is your purpose. That is your mission, to help others succeed and to gain some knowledge of what it is that you know and are putting out there. That's totally fine. But if there is some meaning to it, there's some purpose to it, what that means is that every episode you make, you can look back at that purpose, that vision, and that mission to understand is this episode that I'm about to record or that I am planning align with that purpose? It's exactly the same with branding. I tell my clients this for their business. Is this branded decision of making this website or this stationery, signage, offering a new product or a service, does that align with what our brand represents? What our core purpose is, what our mission is here for us and for our customers or clients or audience or listeners? What is the purpose of your podcast? That's the question I'm going to leave you with at the end of this podcast here. Thank you very much for tuning in. I look forward to connecting with you on social media on @G'dayFrank on Instagram, or you can connect with me at brandmypodcast.com if you need a little bit of help starting your podcast with confidence. Until next time, see you very soon. Bye.